We're joined today by John Eckenrode, president of the Pennsylvania State Corrections Officers Association. One of Governor Josh Shapiro's budget proposals this year is to close 2 state prisons and 2 residential facilities. Why is he doing this?
I assume, number one, thank you for having me on. I really appreciate the opportunity to talk before your audience. I assume it's to cut costs in the budget.
For those that are not familiar, can you explain who you represent?
My name is John Eckenrode. I represent corrections employees in all of our state corrections facilities across the Commonwealth, all of our community corrections centers, and our 2 state hospitals.
What did you think about the fact that the governor didn't explicitly detail this proposal within his budget speech?
I wish that the transparency was a little bit better than what it is. There's a lot of things that we don't feel have been brought to the forefront that need to be brought to the forefront. The announcement on February the 4th by the Secretary of Corrections basically encompassed the entire Commonwealth, and we had a lot of members, and I'm sure other corrections employees that we don't represent, that were really upset and worried about, is it going to be us? And I think that there's no good way to announce a closure, but I think it could have been done a lot better.
Did you have any advance notice either of the closures themselves or about forthcoming efforts to cut costs?
I did not. I was informed probably a half hour before the governor made his address.
Did you have any sense of how the facilities were selected to the ones that are being slated to close at this time?
I don't. They supposedly created a steering committee. That's a steering committee, according to the Secretary of Corrections, through her testimony to the Appropriations Committee, has met 4 times beginning in January. That's part of the transparency issue that we have. We don't even know exactly who was on that committee or what did they do? Did they take minutes? I've sent 8 questions to the Secretary of Corrections. She did answer through email. I've yet to speak to her in person one time. This is a big event for our all employees, and I find it very troubling that no phone call, no visit. We're communicating through email.
Have you heard anything from the steering committee regarding reasons why the Rockville and Quayhana boot camp facilities are the ones that are being selected?
So I believe the steering committee put a letter out on February the 7th, if I remember correctly, and it was a 6-page letter. They give a few details on exactly what they looked at, and we have issues with that document itself. They list several maintenance upgrades that are needed. We believe that a lot of those upgrades that they cite in that letter were actually completed and paid for already. So that's some of the issues that we have with that letter. And the letter is, like I said, is 6 pages long. I'm sure I would hope they're going to give a more detailed report at the end of this, whether we end up closing these facilities or hopefully they remain open. That's what we're looking for.
How much saving is anticipated from the closures?
They claim anywhere, I've heard a couple different figures, $100 million a year.
If the closures move forward, what happens with the facilities themselves, the physical buildings, particularly if they don't get sold? Is there some sort of plan if that doesn't happen?
I don't know. I know we closed, when I say we, I'm talking about the department. Mm-hmm. The department closed SCI Retreat in 2019-20. We're still paying $14 million a year as a Commonwealth to maintain and upgrade those facilities. So we've continued to close jails. We've closed maybe 5 jails since 2013, and we're not realizing the cost savings. Every year our budget increases. Supposedly we were supposed to save somewhere in the neighborhood of $40 million when SCI Retreat closed. Senator Baker was on the other day on the appropriations panel, and she'll tell you we have not seen that cost savings recognized yet.
Would the state have to pay to have the buildings demolished if they cannot be sold?
That would be a question you'd have to ask them, but I would assume that would be what would happen.
How would you describe incarceration rates in recent years? Have they been declining?
They have been declining.
Is there a particular prison rate of the population that triggers the closure?
I don't believe that. I don't believe so. I'm not exactly sure how they make the determination on what jails are going to close. Our population has dropped. A lot of that was due to COVID. We did a lot of early releases to try to mitigate the spread of COVID. And one can argue, and I know it's been said, that we're not prosecuting criminals the way that we used to. So I think there's many different factors that attribute to why our numbers are actually dropping.
Since you referenced the coronavirus pandemic and that some prisoners were released early due to healthcare concerns, has there been some sort of trend, perhaps nationally, about prisons downsizing as a result of this?
I do believe that there's a national trend showing that. I do.
The State Corrections Department said that corrections officers could retain a job in another facility if their facility is closed. Do you have any insight into making that arrangement, or how that will be determined who goes to what facilities?
So as of today, March the 5th, this is the way that we've been told that it's going to work. Of course, over a period of time that's subject to change, but they created a 67-mile radius bubble, if you want to say that. And basically what they do is they put a pin in a map in the middle of the jail, and they go 67 miles in all directions. But what they don't realize, or what they don't factor in, is individuals may be driving 40 miles already on the other side of that bubble. And now, we could see individuals, and unfortunately a lot of individuals, that end up driving, upwards of 100 miles to get to work now. So yes, they did guarantee job placement, but I don't think that they always look at the big picture of how that is actually going to work for the individual.
Would consolidating inmates, particularly into buildings that aren't currently at full capacity, have an impact on safety, both for either the inmates and or the corrections officers?
Well, if I understand your question correctly, what we're going to do is we're going to close these facilities. If it comes to that, we're going to move those inmates to other facilities across the Commonwealth. I can tell you in 2018 and 19, I've been a corrections officer for 26 years, going on 26 years. 2018 and 19 were two of the most violent years I've seen in my career. 2018, unfortunately, we had a murder at SCI Somerset. We lost Sergeant Mark Boserman. And it seemed like every day we had staff assaults and inmates fighting, or stabbing, killing each other. It was a very violent time, very violent 2 years. And when you look at those population numbers per institution, we were very overcrowded. We were at 100% capacity in almost every prison. So our individual jail population numbers are, somewhat low compared to those 2 years. But now we're going to disperse these inmates across, the Commonwealth, and those individual jail population numbers are going to come up. And anytime you see population numbers increase, there's always violence that follows behind it. That's a trend. Historically, you talk to anybody that's worked in a prison for more than a year, and they'll tell you that's how this works. Unfortunately, the Secretary of Corrections testified at the Appropriations Committee hearing that it was brought up that our violence has increased by 21% in 2024, and she cited a couple different reasons, and one of the reasons one of the statements that she made was that the majority of that violence happened in 7 prisons. And when I looked at the violence numbers this morning, I was able to show, or I can show, that those 7 prisons that she's talking about were 7 of the more populated prisons. 5 of the 7, or 4 of the 7, were in the 90% plus capacity ratio. And there was only one jail that was below 80% that fell in that most violent 7 prisons. So I have general fear, and I know our members, our employees have general fear that by dispersing these inmates across the state, we're going to raise those levels and we're going to see upticks in violence again.
Have you received any assurances that facilities that receive transferred prisoners won't go beyond a certain capacity level?
No, I have not.
What will the closures mean in terms of, we talked about safety a little bit for the correctional officers. How about for the prisoners themselves?
Well, I mean, anytime you're moving, you got to understand that these prisons are almost like cities behind a fence. And it's very unfortunate, but it's true. There's crime. There's crime behind the fence. There's crime in the city streets. And basically, when you disperse this, this population, there's drug dealers in our jails. There's prostitution in our jails. There's weapons manufacturing that happens in our jails. And it's almost like being on a corner. And I'm the drug dealer at my jail, for lack of a better term, and that's my corner. Well, now you're going to introduce these people into a new a new street corner, and there's going to be some turf wars that happen because of this.
The Pennsylvania Prison Society noted a lessened recidivism rate when a prisoner has regular visits with their family members. Would transferring these prisoners have an impact on that?
Would it have an impact on visits?
On their ability to have family visits if they're moved to another location?
I guess it could, just because of the distance that they may have to travel. But we've turned to a lot of video visits. A big part of the drug introduction that comes into our facilities, unfortunately, it comes from visits.
What will influence or determine where prisoners are transferred?
That would be completely up to the Department of Corrections.
Let's talk a little bit about reintegration programs that involved areas like education, substance abuse, etc. How would those be impacted by the closures?
I believe that they're going to be offered the same programs that they've always been offered. I don't think that there's going to be any interruption in those types of programs.
Can you talk a little bit more about how the potential closures could have an impact on a prisoner's day-to-day life?
I'll be honest with you, I don't think it's going to have any impact on them.
Let's talk a little bit more about the economic impact. What economic impact do you see these prison closures having on the regions that are affected where the facilities are closing?
So unfortunately, I went through a closure in 2013. I was at SCI Crescent in Cambria County, and it's definitely going to have an impact on the community. And not only is it going to have an immediate effect, there's contracts that are procured throughout, the local region for, various types of things. But not only is it going to affect local businesses, but there's a tax base there. And, over a period of time, some of these people are not going to move. They're going to be willing to travel distance to go to whatever location they go to. But it's going to be a generational thing. As these people retire and they're no longer, living in the area that they live in or working, like paying their taxes, there's no backfill coming in the door. There's no new employees coming to Rockview if they close, or Quahana Boot Camp if they close, or Progress, or Warnersville CC Center.
Let's look back historically. There were a few prisons that closed during the Wolf administration. How did the communities that were affected fare?
Well, like the Crescent community, I can speak for, I went to high school in Crescent, and it had an impact on Crescent. I don't know that they fully recovered from that. But, this Act 133, we're grateful that we have it. We're grateful that the community is going to have at least an opportunity to present to the steering committee, the Secretary of Corrections, possibly the governor's office, and identify, what exact impact this is going to have on our communities. And it's very important for these people to come out and, express, if they have concerns, they need to come out and make their voices heard.
For those that aren't familiar, can you explain what Act 133 is and the protections that it establishes?
Sure. So basically, Act 133 creates a window, and this window allows for stakeholders, all stakeholders involved, whether union, we'll have some input on this, the local community, to voice their opinion, explain why they either are in favor of such a closure or opposed to such a closure. I don't see anybody coming out in favor of closures, and I can tell you this, in my office I've got over 100 letters from inmates that don't want these places to close. The Quahana Boot Camp, I think that's a worthy program. I don't know what their intentions are, if they plan to move that somewhere else. But in 2023, as Senator Langerhulk talked about this at the appropriations hearing, that program has actually saved the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania money. And that, like I said, I've been doing this for a long time, 26 years. I've been a corrections officer. That is the one program that I've seen in my career that has actually paid dividends and worked. And why we're going to undo this, it does kind of mind boggle me a little bit. I've gotten letters from inmates at Rockview, and they're asking for the place not to close. They're asking, reaching out to state lawmakers. So that there's many different stakeholders in this. Act 133 gives people the ability to come out and have their voices heard, and it sets timelines on how that's supposed to work.
What are the most frequent concerns that you've heard from your members since the governor made his proposal in February?
Well, the number one worry for us, no matter what the situation is, it's always safety. It's unfortunate, but prisons are violent places. And it's not always, the inmates that suffer this violence. It's the people that work there also.
What is the proposed time frame for the closures to potentially take place?
Well, according to the Act 133, it's all told it's going to take about 7 months.
If the general public would like to comment on the proposed closures, what can they do?
They can show up at these public hearings and make sure that they, anybody that wants to speak is going to have the opportunity to speak. We're having a rally at the Capitol on April the 1st at 10 o'clock in the morning. Everybody is welcome to come. We would love to have the support of the community come down. We're going to have some state lawmakers speak, and we're going to make our voices heard. We're going to make sure that our members and their families are heard.
Where can the general public go to find information about public comment and other activities where they might be able to voice their concerns?
To the Department of Corrections website.
What will you do to advocate on behalf of your members moving forward on this issue?
We've been advocating for them from day one, and I've had meetings with both facilities, with the members that work there. And I told them, listen, we're going to fight this. We're going to do everything that we can to make this not happen. I've written letters to every legislator in Pennsylvania. I've had personal conversations, phone conversations, met people in person, and I'm going to continue to do that. And we're looking for ways to possibly write some type of language into the fiscal code that basically says if this closure language exists in the budget, I'm going to ask people not to vote for it. And I think that's really the only thing that we can do moving forward, and reach out to the community. I think that we've had pretty good response in the Center County area, and I know we've definitely had good response in the Clearfield area. They need to understand that this is going to have a direct effect, and it's going to hurt. And I hope that they really show up. I hope that they come out, and I hope that they show the support that needs to be shown.
John Eckenrode, thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much.